Good evening. This is my, pardon me, this is my review for AK Interactive paints. As you can see on my desk, I've got some Citadel ones and some Vallejo ones, but this review is going to focus on the AK Interactive paints. I've been using them now for about 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, so I've logged in a lot of painting time with them. They're an excellent paint, very smooth to use, flows well off the brush. Colour-wise, it's at that pretty much perfect spot between being a matte and being a satin paint. So they're a little bit below, they're a little bit more matte than what you'd expect if you're used to painting with Vallejo. If you're used to painting with Vallejo, these paints, a lot of the names are the same. The colours, for about the sake of about a half a shade or so, they're the same. But they are excellent. The metallics, yeah, they're not as brilliant as the Vallejo colours. To be totally honest, the best metallics I've run into painting models are done by Scale 75. It's probably the only thing I really like out of the Scale 75 range of colours is their metal and alchemy. If you want really good metallics, get the metal and alchemy paints. They're well worth investing in. I've got about a half of the 232 paints in the AK Interactives range. So you can see it is a very big range. It's not as big as the Vallejo range, which I think is somewhere in the area of 400 and something paints. Maybe a little bit more. But Vallejo's colours and shades, I think they've got a colour and shade to cater to everything, and that's where their strength really lies. The paints mix well, they blend very well. You can go over them with colours from other companies without having to worry about bleeding, which is something I've done. Which is why I'm using the Citadel contrast paints and the Citadel washes, because again, quite simply, they're the best out there. I've worked with the others. I've worked with Army Painters inks and washes. They stain, Army Painters stain more and shade a bit less. They don't tend to recess as well as the Citadel paints. Whereas the Citadel paints will go into the recesses better and stain the actual colour less than the Army Painter paints. So depending on what effect you're going for, if you want to darken the actual colour down and go into the recesses, you're probably better going to Army Painter. But if you want to just go into the recesses, give yourself a nice shadow, give a very minimum effect, the color, minimum darkening to the colour that you're using, Citadel paints all the way every day. They are the best for their washes and their contrast paints. Their regular paint range, there was a time it was fantastic. I used it myself for I think 20 years before I noticed how much the quality in the paints was deteriorating, how much trouble it was giving me blending, how much trouble it was separating, the quality in the whites and stuff. It was just getting horrendous, and paints were just drying out in the pots after a couple of months. As an example, my Vallejo paints I had for 5 years, and I've only recently got to the stage where I've got to replace them all because they've only now sort of separated or died. I'm hoping I get the same usage out of my AK paints. So that covers the bare details. Most people I know, when they do a review like this, will show paints on models. They will show paints on how it goes on. I'm going to pan the camera a little bit to indicate, to show you. Like the models you can see here, they were all painted with AK Interactive paints. They're a bit shiny because I've gone over them with a gloss varnish because I prefer the sheen. I find the gloss protects better than a matte, but that's me. But as you can see there, they are AK Interactive base paints, Citadel washes, and a bit of blending mixed paint up to bring up the skin highlights. The quality is excellent. That is a model I'm currently working on. Again, AK Interactive paints, Citadel washes. That's the red on the cloak is AK Interactive's matte red with Citadel's Seraphim Sepia wash over the top to shade. Very simple technique, and the colour's very good. Let's just pan that back to there, so you can go back to looking at the paints. The other thing that makes the AK Interactive paints somewhat unique, and it's a very nice feature, the paints have got little dip wells in the top of the lid, as well as they've got this cross-shaped lids, so it makes unscrewing the lid one-handed much easier. But you can put drops of the paint in the top, so if you stack your paints that way at an angle or flat like that, you can just look over the top, grab the colour you want, and you can see it straight away. Brilliant idea. Very inventive, and it helps stop the nozzles clogging as well. So that's my quick overview of AK Interactive paints. I know I've rambled a little bit about Citadel and Vallejo and scale colour, but I did explore scale colour paints. I bought pretty much the entire range of one review video, which I regret because they are inconsistent. I find they dry extremely matte. Some of the paints are brilliant. Their fantasy and myth colour range is okay. I can't really punch holes in it. It's a bit more satin than the scale colour range, but overall, as good as scale colour are, the scale 75 colours are, it's just not for me. As I say, the only thing I use from them is the metallics, and I guess that's what we all do now as hobbyists of paint. We cherry pick the best of what we can get from all the ranges and build our toolbox of paints and paint with that. If you want to buy a mono company's range of colours, the best I have worked with, hand on heart, is Vallejo. Bar none. Gives a little bit more sheen, but they're still the best. And I've worked with Vallejo paints for 5 years, Citadel for 20. I've locked about 100 hours each into scale colour and AK colour, so I think I'm in a position to judge and say hand on heart what the best colours are. But for range of colours, quality of colours, reliability of colour, Vallejo, their model colour, and their new-ish Panzer Ace colour range, pick and choose your colours from that lot, you'll have no trouble. They are the best. AK Interactive, I'd say second to that. They are the closest thing to Vallejo I have worked with. Again, excellent paints, excellent quality, and again, if you want a mono spectrum, you don't want to go to Vallejo because the range of colours intimidates you, go to AAKs. They are the best you will get outside of Vallejo. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for watching and listening.